Hey everybody, this is Brandon Gaudin, former voice for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, and you're listening to Basketball Conference, the ACC football podcast. Go Jackets, go ACC.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Basketball Conference, the ACC football podcast. My name is Joey Weaver, continuing our team preview series here tonight with Mr. Jim Hammett, PantherLair.com on the 24/7 Sports Network. Jim, you know him, you love him. Jim, good to have you back on the program. Looking forward to talking some Pitt Panthers tonight. How you doing? How was your offseason?
It was pretty good. I think at this point I've already I'm a week into training camp, so I'm already in football mode. But this is a familiar conversation between you and I. I think we've had it for about 10 years now.
Yep, one of our most tenured guests, going back all the way to the SB Nation days. I think is where you and I started crossing paths. So always good catching up with you, Jim. And you're used to the drill here. We're going to start talking about the coaching staff and. Pat Narduzi has been the coach basically ever since you and I started talking about this in the podcast, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, whatever it was. Pat Narduzi enters year 11 head coach of the Panthers program. Coming off an odd year, and I know we talked about it back in, I think, February or March, we had you on. Pitt, for those who don't remember, started the year 7-0 last year, finished the year 7-6. So they lost 6 in a row to end the year, including the bowl game to Toledo. I think that was a day after Christmas in Detroit, which is as depressing a thing as I could possibly think of. But we've talked about it, especially last year coming in, Cade Bell, year 2, he comes into in 2025. I guess my question to you, and Pat Narduzi is one of these guys, him and Dave Doran, and we talked about Dave Clawson before. He already retired. It's a new era of college football, and Narduzi just doesn't seem like – he seems like kind of the old school, no-nonsense kind of guy who might struggle to accept and adapt to the new era of NIL and heavy transfer portal and all this stuff that we've seen drive away a lot of coaches. I guess my question to you is – in what you've interacted with him and everything, how long do you see Pat Narduzi wanting to stick around and continue doing this? Do you see him doing this another 5 years, or is he a guy that you could see almost at any given moment saying, you know what, I've had enough of this. I'm retiring, or I'm going to go be an NFL linebackers coach or something along those lines?
I kind of feel like the Pitt head coaching job is probably going to be his last job. How long that goes, I'm unsure. But it just kind of seems like, you would expect him to be a guy that's stubborn and stuck in his ways. But I think he's done a pretty good job of embracing the transfer portal, NIL. I mean, you look every year, Pitt's always going after guys on the portal. And I think they kind of run their program like with a professional mindset. And part of that's just because they share a building with the Steelers. It's just like everything they do is kind of structured like how an NFL team would do it. So it's surprising. Like, he is 59. He's been going at it for a while. This is year 11 as a head coach. I mean, but then you think of all those years, Michigan State, Cincinnati as a defensive coordinator. Like, he's really been in this game for a long time. So I think there might just be a point where this is it. Like, I'm done and I'm in my 60s. I'll move into an administrative role, but I don't really see him ever leaving for another head coaching job. I don't ever see him, going that route of, I just want to get back to coaching. I think he's okay with this new world. I think he is. So, and part of it is, we talked about NIL, we talked about transfer portal and how he's been adaptive in that. And you mentioned at the top is Cade Bell, and that's entirely different than anything he's ever done. In year 10, he went into last season and he hired a 33-year-old offense coordinator that has never coached at the Power 4 level. He hired a guy that runs a spread offense after years of having guys with pro-style NFL veteran offensive coordinators. So he was okay with reinventing himself late into his career. So I think there's still a hunger there for him. How long it lasts, I'm not sure, but I don't think he's ever really looking for anything else other than where he's at.
That makes sense. And you talk about Cade Bell. I mean, it's not the first good, successful offensive coordinator that Pitt has had, right? Like, I can think back, what was his name? The guy that left for LSU a number of years ago, but the 2016. Yeah, Matt Canada. Like, he was great. They had a good thing going there with Kenny Pickett there for a couple of years. Another offensive coordinator, his name is slipping my mind right now.
Whipple,
Mark Whipple. There you go. Yeah, we're just on a roll here tonight. Cade Bell, though, comes in year one, and it was kind of an interesting way that it all kind of happened, because the first 4 or 5 games of the year, they were really effective on offense, like in a way that we hadn't seen in a few years, basically since Mark Whipple had left. And it was like, oh, this might be a new era of Pitt football in the way that this looks. Next few games didn't go so well. And then after that, Eli Holstein kind of hurt, didn't really finish the year out well. I guess I'm curious to, like, what should you expect in year two? Is this what was the real Eli Holstein? What was the real version of this offense? Is it more of the same we saw in that first few weeks, or did everyone else kind of catch up to what was going on to where you're concerned, can they really replicate that in year two?
Yeah, I think with Eli Holstein is there was enough there in that first month, first 6-7 games or whatever it was, that you're at least intrigued for year two. Like I think his first 5 games, he was ACC Rookie of the Week 5 straight times. Like he was doing some really incredible things. He led 2 fourth quarter comebacks against rivals, beating Cincinnati and West Virginia. Like he was started to like pull off like some legendary stuff. Like his numbers were being attached to Dan Marino's numbers. It was like, holy crap, like this is happening. Then there was some setbacks. I mean, I think Pitt's offensive line started to get hurt, which in turn, forced him into getting hurt. He missed 3 games last year. So there were times last year where it did seem like defenses kind of figured out what Pitt was doing. And I think that's as much as the coordinator as it is the quarterback. I think they both had some growing pains last year. I kind of point to the Cal game last year. They won that game, but they won 17-15. They won because Desmond Reed broke off like a 70-yard run. But like Eli was kind of throwing into coverages. Cal was kind of baiting him into some throws. And those are the kind of steps you want to see him grow out of. And he just never got that chance last year because like once that happened, like he kind of got hurt and like everything just got derailed from there.
Well, and especially going into a year two situation where the coordinator has maybe a little bit more of the type of personnel that he's looking for. The quarterback has some more reps in the system, more time in the film room, that kind of thing, to understand what you're trying to do and more comfort in different situations. I mean, you would hope to have a leap into year two of sorts. Maybe, maybe not a huge leap, but certainly further progression from what you saw in year one. One of the things that I think might be playing in here is I know that a couple of the key transfers that came in were from Florida State, from Louisville, kind of Power 5 level guys. Was that kind of a focus of I guess I'll say the transfer portal effort, but basically the roster, with the additions that they made in the offseason? Was it the skill guys on offense? Who are some of the key guys that you see making an impact here this fall that we didn't see last year?
Yeah, I would say on offense, like I think the big thing right now and one of the biggest competitions in camp is the left side of the offensive line. Last year they had Branson Taylor. He was a good player, but he got hurt. He was drafted in, I think, the 5th or 6th round by the Chargers. So he's a pretty talented player. But once his injury happened, everything else kind of got messed up. Like the right tackle had to move to left tackle. The guards started getting hurt. It was just just kind of a revolving door. So this year they went out, they got 3 transfers: Kendall Stanley from Charlotte, Jeff Percy from Michigan, and Keith Gouveia from Richmond. And like those 3 guys are battling for 2 starting spots right now, but they feel like they have more depth there. We talked to Eli Holstein earlier this week during training camp, and he said he's staying upright more. Coach Narduzi's not blowing the whistle. They're not getting sacks at practice. So I think that's a big thing. And they added some help on the offensive line. They also had a little help at wide receiver, and they are hopeful for Blue Hicks from Louisville. He didn't play a ton last year for the Cards, but like he's in the mold of wide receivers they like. He's a slot receiver. He's fast. He's quick. Kind of gels with what Cade Bell likes to do. So they're hopeful for him. So I mean, those were the big impact guys. They got Deuce Spann from Florida State. He's been in college football forever. I think he was a quarterback at some point at Illinois. Then he went to Florida State, but he's 6'4". He kind of brings something different they don't have because most of the receivers are slot receivers. So like they did add some help in the portal. I think those linemen are going to help, but I think what's going to drive this offense are kind of the guys that are returning too.
Well, and the key guy returning has to be Desmond Reed. I mean, a guy who came over from I believe it was Western Carolina, right, with Cade Bell. A guy who had a huge year one last year. I can't imagine that they imagine his role decreasing at all. It's more maybe a question of can he hold up physically as he is probably the focal point of this offense, him along with Eli Holstein.
Yeah, Reed last year was like 5th in the country in all-purpose yardage. He was a second-team All-American. He has every type of preseason recognition you can get this year, from All-American to All-Conference, Doak Walker Award list. I mean, that's just kind of the dynamic player he is. He scored 10 touchdowns last year. He had rushing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. He returned a punt. He can just beat you in a variety of ways. He is a dynamic player. I think he had 50 catches as a running back. So if you put a linebacker in him, like, good luck. So like, Pitt's really going to set their offense around him. And obviously, like, the first thing you notice when you watch Desmond Reed play, it's like, yeah, he is 5'6". Like, he's a small guy, but like, he's durable. He's tough. I mean, I think he's a good football player. I think even in that bowl game, like, even though, like you mentioned, Detroit day after Thanksgiving, like, pretty much a nightmare scenario, everyone was at home watching that game, and like, Desmond Reed was just running through people. Like, he was awesome, and I think the country really got a taste of what he's like. So yeah, he might be 5'7" and 170 pounds, but like, he's a good back, and I think Pitt's really counting on him to have a big year.
Yeah, to your point, he tied Kanata Mumfield with 52 catches for the team lead last year, receiving yards out of the backfield, which is really impressive. If we look at just generally what we expect from the offense this fall, I mean, I guess the biggest thing that I heard that kind of led to some of the offensive stagnation that we saw mid-year last year was the offensive line depth. Is that the big key to you, is either keeping those guys healthy and or some increased depth from what we had last year? Or is there something else that you think that would maybe lead to better performance this fall, kind of throughout the season, as opposed to just kind of early on the offensive side of the ball?
I think like some of it just like ties together. Like, I think the offensive line needs to be able to protect Eli Holstein. I think Eli Holstein needs the offensive line to have that comfort level again. I think if Pitt's going to have a successful season, probably one of the biggest catalysts is Eli Holstein just taking a step forward. I think he's a really talented player. He's a former top 100 recruit. Pitt got him as a transfer from Alabama. So like, they really think the sky's the limit for him, and they were really tantalized by what he did in that first 5 games last year. So if he can have that step forward, I think he just makes everyone else better, because like, you at least have one known commodity in Desmond Reed. Like, you can lean on that. But like, if Eli Holstein could take that step forward, be that leader, and that was one of the things I asked Pat Narduzi at the start of camp. It's like, this is the first year since 2021 Kenny Pickett, Pitt's had a returning starting quarterback. I mean, it went from Phil Dracovic and Keaton Slovis to Eli Holstein. They had 3 straight transfers. So this is the first time you've ever had continuity since Kenny Pickett. So I think that's something they really need to take advantage of, and they're really hoping works out in their favor.
If I look back at 2024, I mean, the offense was great those first few games, but I think maybe the bigger question in my mind, or the bigger concern that I had, was that this defense did not feel like it was quite as effective as a lot of the Pat Narduzzi defenses we've gotten used to seeing. And between him and Randy Bates, who's been there for a number of years now as the defensive coordinator, one of the things I know that we've talked about on this show before, Jim, is the last couple of years, it feels like there's been a lack of this like dominant pass rusher that we saw for so many years. There was always a guy, and it just feels like that's kind of missing. The linebacker core looks great and was great and figures to continue to be great. Do you figure that's enough? Is there continued development in that front 7, or is there still something maybe missing on that front that might continue to lead to some potential, I call them issues, shortcomings, whatever, for the defense that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a Pat Narduzzi defense, a Pitt defense, it's like, I think going in, like, you could probably get to them in the passing game. Like, where Pitt's going to have their success is getting after the quarterback, making the splash plays, forcing turnovers. Like, they'll give up some yards in the passing game, but they really want to take away the run, and they really want to get after the quarterback. And I don't think they did that all that well last year. I mean, Kyle Lewis was great. He was arguably the best defensive player in the ACC last year. Rasheed Biles is also really good. They have a world of confidence in Braylon Lovelace, who's going to step in. So those linebackers are as good as anyone in the league, and maybe even the country. I mean, you're talking about really high-level players. Pitt has not had that, I guess, powerful defensive lineman in a while. I mean, it was Kalijah Kanson 2022, but they've missed a good guy off the edge. So I think one of the big things like they're looking for is they added 3 transfers at defensive end, and they're looking for production out of them. And I think they're really hopeful about a guy named Jaden Moore. He came from Oregon. He played a lot last season. I think he is a guy Oregon wanted to keep, but he was going to be a depth guy for him. He wanted to come to Pitt. He wanted to start. He knows Pitt's defense is known for getting after the quarterback. So I think he's a guy that they're really counting on. And another one I would mention is Sean Fitzsimmons. He played a little bit last year. He missed the first 4 games with injuries, but he started the final 9. He showed some promise. Pitt usually gets a lot out of their interior defensive tackles. When you think back to Cansey, Jalen Twyman, they almost count on their interior guys to get stuff, and they believe he's a guy that can do that.
Yep. I guess it was before the Narduzi era, but I remember a guy named Aaron Donald who was pretty good there on the interior defensive line for Pitt. It's kind of been a stalwart for a number of years there. Kyle Lewis in particular, I mean, that guy has real All-American potential. I mean, he not only leads the team in sacks and tackles for loss last year as a linebacker, but also led the team in interceptions. I mean, a guy who both has it physically as well as mentally. He's got to be the absolute superstar on this defense, and a guy that has absolute potential to be an All-American there at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, I mean, he was like, he just like stuffed this stat sheet last year. I mean, he had over 100 tackles, like 16 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 4 picks, blocked an extra point. I mean, then returned it himself on the same play. I mean, like, that's just the type of guy he is. He flies to the football, and there was like a weird confidence about him last year. Like, he wasn't Kyle Lewis just yet, but like the vibe around the program was like, this guy's special, and he went out and did it. And I think there's every expectation that he can do it again. And I mean, like, you know, I mentioned those 3 linebackers, like their signature moment last year is like when they went 7-0, they beat Syracuse. Kyle Lewis, Rasheem Biles, and Braylon Lovelace all had a pick 6 of Kyle McCord in the first half against Syracuse. Like, that's what they expect their linebackers to be. And I think that's kind of what they're hoping it can continue to be.
When you look at the secondary, Jim, do you have any concerns there? Because it seemed like that was an area where those guys maybe had some struggles. They allowed a lot of explosive plays last year, looking back on it. And I know Donovan McMillan, kind of the big superstar from that, I'll call it a superstar, you know, the most important player from that group, he's gone as a senior. Like, is there reason to believe that group will be a little bit more formidable than they were last year?
I think the reason to believe anything would be just that they've been successful with it. They've had good defensive backs, and it's the same 2 coaches they've had for years now. So, I mean, you go back and look at the safeties that have played in the NFL from Pitt recently. I mean, you know, DeMar Hamlin, you have like guys like Dane Jackson, Jordan Whitehead, like they've been putting a lot of guys in the NFL lately. So I think there's just a belief that they're just going to, you know, churn out another good player or 2 this year. So I'm still interested to see. I think there's some battles going on at cornerback. They have 3 guys kind of battling for 2 spots, but the one player I'm kind of interested in seeing, and I think it's kind of like Kyle Lewis last year. Like, there's just this weird confidence about him. His name's Cruz Brookins. He's a safety. He's from Pittsburgh. Wasn't a highly rated guy, but like every time there's spring camp or there's training camp, it's like Cruz Brookins had like 2 interceptions today. It's like he always finds his hands on the ball. So I think they're really excited about him, and I think he's like a sneaky, you know, maybe dark horse to be an all-conference player for Pitt this season.
Taking a look at the schedule here, out of conference, first 3 games start the year: Duquesne and Central Michigan, not so bad, and then a road trip to Morgantown to play West Virginia, backyard brawl. That's a year 1 coaching situation. So I'd like to think that, you know, unless you get some rivalry game weirdness, that's advantage Pitt. You know, a much more established program has the advantage there. They do get Louisville at home, Boston College after that, and then at Florida State, at Syracuse, NC State, at Stanford. Most of that feels pretty reasonable. So I tend to think that this is kind of an advantageous schedule, that, you know, Louisville's kind of probably the toughest game in the first 9 that they play. And then the final 3, Notre Dame at home, at Georgia Tech, Miami at home. I think that it kind of provides the opportunity of a runway, basically, to get things rolling, get some confidence going, so that then when you get into that final 3 games, it gives you the best shot that you're going to have to be able to pull off some wins there to end the year, maybe an upset in one of those situations.
Yeah, it almost sounds like strikingly similar to last year, where you start 7-0, then lose 6 in a row at the end of the season. So yeah, like they've been in this position before. But yeah, I agree with you. I do think it sets up well, and I think it's funny. Like, I don't know if you've been like catching on Twitter, like speaking, like going back to that West Virginia game, like Rich Rodriguez doesn't like sound confident, or he's trying to intentionally sound like his team's not that good. Because like anytime I see anything out of their camp, it's like, man, our team's going to struggle this year. And it's like, that's a weird thing for a coach to say.
Yeah.
But
not selling a lot of tickets that way.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. But like, yeah, like there's that rivalry game weirdness, and like it's real serious down in Morgantown. Like that's going to be an atmosphere. That's a scene. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Louisville's a tough game. I don't know if Pitt will pull that off, but like Boston College seems reasonable. Like, is Florida State really going to be that much better than last year? I'm not convinced Syracuse is going to be as good as last year, and Pitt kind of killed Syracuse last year anyway. So there's a chance to stack some wins. And obviously, you know, on paper, like the only teams that are ranked are Notre Dame and Miami. And those are, you know, games 10 and games 12. And I think they have a chance to make those games meaningful. You know, Pat Narduzi hasn't really fared well against Notre Dame or Miami throughout his career. Those are kind of two bugaboos for not just him, just any Pitt coach. Those are like two teams that have always dominated Pitt. But otherwise, I mean, it's not that crazy. They have good players. Like they could get on a run. They did it last year. It's just, I guess, whenever the adversity comes, it's, you know, just a matter of how they handle it better than they did 1 year ago.
Exactly. Well, and it's like I mentioned to you before we came on here and started recording, is we're talking about, oh man, that Miami game, that Thanksgiving weekend, that's a tough spot for Pitt. But I'm guessing we're going to go on with Cam here in a couple days and talk about how that Pitt spot for Miami at the end of the year is going to be a tough spot for them too. So it's like, that's kind of how the ACC goes, right? Is some of these games, you know, it's a little bit more of a coin flip than maybe we want to believe at times. And by the way, I would really, really hope that this is not a win 7 and then lose 5 situation for Pitt, because that would mean that in game 9 they have lost at Stanford, which I don't think that one's. I think they can at least win that one. Yeah, I would like to be able to at least pencil that one in as a win, if not write it in pen. So will be interesting to see that return trip to Syracuse too. I think back to that game last year, and yes, Pitt did absolutely demolish them, but that was the Kyle McCord 3 pick sixes kind of game, I think, in the first half, and it just completely got away. Like, I don't think that game was that lopsided from a talent, roster standpoint. I think that was much more even than it probably really turned out to be. So I'll be curious to see how that goes in Syracuse in a little bit of a rebuilding year too, but on the road for Pitt. So who knows? A lot of things going on there. So, Jim, are you in a place where you wish to give a record prediction for how this all turns out for Pitt in 2025?
Well, it's funny because we do a podcast, just the Panther Layer podcast each week. And, Chris Peak, my partner, he went on a podcast, did another ACC preview. And he was like, all right, let me try to talk you to 9-3. So we went through the whole schedule. We both said it, and it made sense. 9-3 is very reasonable with the schedule. I think Louisville's a loss. I think Notre Dame's a loss, and NC State's going to be that weird Pitt loss. That just has the type of the momentum killing type loss. But everything else, sometimes you catch Miami at the end of the year, and if they're out of it, they don't care. Sometimes Pitt has benefited from that. Miami kind of will quit on the season if they're 7-3 instead of 9-1. So I think that's a possibility too. I think Georgia Tech's tricky. And another funny thing we brought up is Haynes King and Eli Holstein know each other, because Eli Holstein was committed to Texas A&M, and Haynes King was his host. So they trained together, and they both play a lot alike. They with reckless abandon. There's a chance Eli Holstein or Haynes King or both won't be available in that game.
Yeah, I entirely on the table. Yeah,
very real.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I actually didn't either, because I was talking to Eli at media day, and that came up. I was like, I didn't even know you were committed to Texas A&M. I thought he was Alabama the whole time. So that was like another wrinkle. But I was like, You know, it kind of makes sense that they're friends because like they play football very similar.
Makes you, and that's where I wonder if these are guys that have like the same off field or out of program quarterback coach or whatever, like the independent coach that a lot of these guys have these days. That's a game, that November 22nd in Atlanta. I feel like that's a pretty coin flippy game, and as a Georgia Tech fan myself, I feel better about it being at home. I would probably feel like that's a less than 50% win if that's in Pittsburgh. So it's a home field advantage thing for me if I'm looking at that. But it's funny to me also hearing you say that you can kind of see the NC State loss coming from a mile away as a weird, just the Pitt thing to do. So 9-3 would be you can't call that anything but a success. I think if you're a Pitt fans and if they were to end 9-3, that would be great. Should be I use this word interesting a lot on this podcast, but it'll be an interesting year for the Pitt Panthers. That's for sure. Jim, anything else that you feel like the people should know or need to think about for this season before we get out of here?
They are playing city rival Duquesne to start the year. Like that is the first time Pitt and Duquesne have played, I want to say since 1937. So it's not a common rivalry, even though the campuses are about 2 miles apart.
Wikipedia is telling me that the basketball version of this game is called the City Game.
It is.
All right. Well, I would expect that Pitt will win the City Game.
I think they should.
I don't know who won that game in 1937, but I'm guessing Pitt will at least establish, if not extend, whatever win streak they have in that series in week 1 there against Duquesne.
Actually, Duquesne they've had these bragging rights all these years since 1937.
Well, I mean, that's on Pitt for not playing them. That's they've had the winning streak since before World War II. So there you go. Jim, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate your time coming on here as always. You want to tell the people real quick where they can go find your stuff?
Yeah, it's you can find me on Twitter at Jim Hammett with 2 M's and 2 T's. My name is right out there on the screen. We're panther-layer.com. We recently joined the 247 Sports Network. That move happened in March. We've been really happy with it, and it's been the same brand we've had forever. I mean, it's still Panther Layer, just with a different URL. So I think everything's going well. And if you're a Pitt fan, I think it would be a great addition to your morning routine to check pantherlayer.com.
Absolutely. Longtime friend of the show, longtime great source for anything Pitt sports. Highly recommended, pantherlayer.com. Jim, thank you so much. Appreciate it as always. We look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. We're going to get out of here. We're going to keep recording some of these team preview podcasts. So keep it tuned here and we'll get you ready for the 2025 season. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button, youtube.com/@the-ACC football podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify, wherever else you go find your podcasts. Please go find us there. Hit that subscribe button. We would really, really appreciate that. But until next time, from Mr. Jim Hammett, I am Joey Weaver. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you again very, very soon. Until then, hail to Pitt and go ACC.